Welcome to our third HubCasts. And HubCasts are conversations, we just see where they go. They don't really go anywhere particular. They're interactive. It's what's on your mind and what we're seeing in the Resiliency Hub, what you're seeing in Adaptas. So first I'll introduce you. So Celine Mullins is the CEO of Adaptas Training. And the company has been around for as long as I've known Celine, and they do a lot of training. But Celine is also a coach, a PhD, and she also is an author. But I'm going to let you introduce those aspects of you, Celine.
Okay, well, if it's the third HubCast, then 3 is the magic number. So I just been running Adaptas, been working with businesses for about 13 years now. I'm maybe coming up to 14 years. I'm not sure. That really doesn't matter, does it? So I have been, over the course of working with organizations, work with individuals, with teams, with groups around organizations, we've, worked face-to-face for a long time now, obviously working virtually, and also creating videos and virtual reality experiences for learning exposure for people in organizations as well. And over the course of, I guess, the last number of years, I've been pulling together a lot of themes that I've seen with people, how we learn, how we make changes, leadership, and pulling them together as various different books and publishing them. So we published the first one late 2018, which is called Our Learning Brain. And it's really just taking the psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience of learning and putting it in a really easy language to be able to take away and digest and apply to your own life and your own learning and your own habit change.
I kind of like that because you and I have had so many conversations over the years about habit change and how we can change our habits.
Yeah, so it's not easy for any of us.
No, and even though you think we'd be perfectionists at it at this stage, but at least you've written a book about it.
And definitely I find knowing that information helps me to overcome some of the blocks and the obstacles that we all put up to making the changes. So just having that information and knowing, okay, this is what I need to do.
Yeah. And it's funny, we've learned an awful lot from each other over the years, actually.
Absolutely.
And on habit changing, I think I've definitely learned a lot from you, but I've also kind of put my own layer on top of what you've done. So we might actually come back to that. You mentioned a really good point there, and I'd nearly forgotten it in our introduction about the virtual training that you've done.
Virtual, yeah.
Well, here we are. So you used to do the virtual, and I remember seeing examples of it, and we had these little masks on us. Virtual reality, and here we are. We're all living in that now.
In that virtual reality.
Guise.
Yeah.
So were you ahead of the curve?
Absolutely, always. I mean, with the virtual reality, it's great because you can bring real live action, like what we're doing at the moment, into the headsets, and you can be transported to anywhere in the world. Or you can use, graphics, animations, and create different characters that bring different things to life as well. So for us, it's brilliant because over the years, because we're doing a lot of communication and leadership, we were using actors a lot of the time, and we were using a lot of role play, bringing communication to life. And so with virtual reality, you can actually just drop people into situations and scenarios and where they have to meet somebody and maybe be part of a conversation, and then see how they react and learn about how they're reacting and think about what they could do differently.
That's very good, because actually this is completely off the cuff, as we have already said. So this is really going to be off the cuff, because actually you and I have been talking about communication so much, and I really feel that there is something that we can develop together around communication, because even as I'm doing this HubCast, I'm really struggling to look at the camera and not to look at what I'm doing. And in fact, I feel as if I'm not engaging with you at all.
I know. And it's funny because a lot of people, I mean, I even noticed myself when we started moving into this virtual world for the last, 8 weeks, that, you still want to look at people's faces when you're talking to them. But if you're looking at their face on the screen, then it doesn't look to them like you're looking at them. So you actually have to look at where your camera is coming from for them to feel like you're looking at them. So if I look down at you now, it'll maybe look like I'm looking down rather than at you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's really hard to keep my focus on the camera, on the little
Yeah.
light, and to not look at you.
Yeah.
It just takes away so much of our ability to communicate, because so much of our communication is our body language. And so if I'm
That's
looking
it.
at this camera to make you feel like I'm looking at you,
Yeah.
but then I'm losing so many of the clues to how you're feeling and what you're thinking.
Well, I'm going to tell you, because I'm feeling really awkward because I'm not looking at you.
Yeah.
And so that's really tough for me. And actually what I have realized is, unbeknownst to myself, I have not been looking at people. So there's so much going on. So
yeah,
I'm not going to become really aware of that. And I think we should do a training around that. I think we should combine all of those skills and do a training. So watch this space.
Yeah. And the other thing is, because you can, with Zoom and with all these various different approaches, you can also see yourself. And I can see myself over to the corner there, and I'm trying not to look at myself.
Yeah.
It's not because I want to look at myself. It's just, it's very hard to,
Yeah.
you know, I can see my hands coming up into the screen, and then I'm like, oh my God, they look really big.
No, they're perfect. They're perfect. But it's true. This whole adapting, and I thought I had got so used to Zoom, but I'm not used to the Zoom at all, because I feel as if I'm forcing myself in this situation. But let's see how it turns out.
Every day is a learning experience.
Another one, a live one.
Yeah,
so let's put that on our list. Actually, we'll do a communication HubCast.
Brilliant.
So speaking about communication, one of the things that I have been exploring, and I know I shouldn't have been working over the weekend, but I did work over the weekend. We were exploring the whole idea of communication and masks, and how you've just described a whole scenario there where we're missing so much, and yet we are concentrating so hard looking on a screen. This is going to happen even more. It's another layer. We're like, literally, you're going to be seeing this if you see me in reality.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to miss so much more again.
Yeah, because we literally only be able to read the eyes up. So if we're out and about with masks on, it's very hard to tell what people are feeling, and we're missing out on all sorts of different clues. So similar to this virtual situation, when we're out in the world wearing these masks, we're missing out on so much of the connection that's there that we're used to. And that is, I think that's already impacting on a lot of people's lives, and people are feeling lonely, isolated. I think there was a piece of research there published there last week showing that about at least 25% of people feel really isolated and lonely at the moment. And that's, you know, even when we get back into the world, I think that with the masks and having to kind of hide a certain amount of ourselves, there's still going to, the distance and the 2 meter distance, we're still going to feel isolated. And you know, the thing is that for all the research that's been done on the happiest people in the world over the last number of decades, the one thing that always comes out is that the happiest people have community. They have that connection with others, you know, and even longevity, people live longer because of that connection with other people. So we're losing that at the moment.
Well, it's crazy, because actually I was saying on the last HubCast that I was thriving actually in COVID, because I must be more of an introvert than I always knew I was.
Yeah. Well, there's the mask you might have been wearing for a long time, was the pretending to be an extrovert.
The extrovert, the great pretender, as I keep saying. But actually, and that's an interesting one. So maybe I'm not going to live that long. We better get these podcasts done quite quickly.
Well, you have your family around you.
I've got my family around me. But actually, it's as you say that, I'm just reminded, because today was the first day we could officially go out, and I brought my son out to see his grandmother, who's nearly 90, and he had his mask on his face, and he kept saying, "Granny, I'm smiling at you. I am smiling." So it's another example of how we've broken down the communication. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole of my elderly parents. I want to go back to something you said about habits, and I think you had been talked previously around beliefs and the learning brain, because beliefs is something that just keeps coming up for me and for clients, because I think COVID is testing so many belief systems at the moment. Things that we thought were embedded in our belief systems And you and I think, have a slightly different take on belief systems. So it'd be interesting actually to tease that out while we're recording. Why not?
Where do you want to start?
Will you go with what your, because I attended one of your belief trainings when we were actually in
last
California
summer.
last
Yes.
year.
Yeah. Feels like about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess that limiting beliefs and the limiting beliefs we all hold is something that you really notice when you're working as a coach with people.
Yeah.
And, I'll often be working with an individual who says, oh, I don't feel good enough, or I don't feel as good as other people. And is there something wrong with me? No, there isn't something wrong with you, because I would say, 95% of people feel that some sort of limiting belief about themselves. And it could be that I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as other people, or other people will think I'm stupid, or I'm not worthy of the relationship I'm in, or I'm not worthy of this job, or I'm not good enough to be in this job, or I'm going to be found out. All these different limiting beliefs, and it's different for all of us. But most of us have them.
Yeah.
And I think, just to come back to the masks,
Yeah.
a lot of people are masking those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
So often you could meet somebody who is, very, very confident, and you assume that they're very, very confident, but either they're masking the limiting beliefs they have, or they've done a lot of work on those limiting beliefs, and or, like you said, about kind of, maybe you've been masking the introvert with the extrovert, that society, our roles have expected us to be a certain way. So we often will go the opposite way altogether to try and cover up that limiting belief that we have.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because, and I keep, loads of things are coming in, but we have to keep these short. But I'm going to I'm writing down the things so I remember
them.
We'll
come back to them.
But one of them was, we've been coaching a group in the Resiliency Hub. We've been coaching a group of young people. And because they all keep their cameras off, we decided to have short one-to-ones with them after the last weekly session. And it was a group session, but actually what they were doing constantly is keeping their screens off. We couldn't see, and they were putting things into the chat room. It turns out that they have been loving the training and the coaching online, even in the group scenario. They're thriving in it. They love the format. Whereas I was on the other side going, this is very difficult because there were no faces. So actually it was great. And one of my beliefs around that was I needed to see the faces. And I think that's fairly common. But when I talked separately and individually to these young people, there were 3 girls who were very young, who had such doubts around maths. And you and I have had these conversations all the time. And what I did was I got a big piece of paper and I chunked down all the maths and I said, okay, so now what do you think? Because I'm a real believer of the more you think about something, the more it becomes a belief, the more it becomes reality, the more you can attach emotions to it. And actually, this was one big giant prove it with this young girl the other day. So she felt she was really awful at maths. It turned out it was probably 1/10 of the whole curriculum for the junior cert. But she had told herself that she was rubbish at maths because she didn't know the theorems.
So that's really common, because we have been, sometimes the maths teacher isn't great, or sometimes we've just got stuck on something and then we feel left behind. And it's actually similar to singing, actually. A lot of people believe that they're crap at maths, and a lot of people think that they are awful singers. And often they actually, when they're given the right input, they are great at maths. And when they're given the right training, they realize they are great singers. I've seen people go from thinking they're tone deaf and being tone deaf to actually being able to sing when they're given the right input. And, I was working with a client recently who, it turned out in our conversation that she had been told at a very young age that she was a rubbish singer and she should never sing in public. And that had actually impacted on her confidence in loads of different ways, right? And she'd been told this by her mother and her best friends.
Wow.
Hello. Yeah. So So yeah, and so the other thing you need to think about here is the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you have a growth mindset, you always believe that there's a potential for yourself in every way. You may not become the master of everything you do, but
Mm,
there's always potential to be better at something. You're
yeah.
always looking out for the opportunities. You're looking to learn from other people. But back to the math, a lot of people who even mastered the growth mindset around other areas of their life have a fixed mindset around maths. And some people, it might be a fixed
Mm,
mindset around communication, or it might be a fixed mindset around singing. It could be
yeah.
anything. And so, really just keep coming back and asking yourself, are there other people that are good at this that could break a few things down for me? Where
Yeah.
is the opportunity here? Where could I, just give myself a break? Because a lot of the time it's just the messaging we've been giving ourselves over years. I'm rubbish at this. And
That's it.
therefore it's like you said,
Yeah.
if you start thinking it, then you start believing it, then it
Yeah.
becomes a reality, and it
Yeah.
becomes your reality for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are so accustomed to believing that it is because of something. So even one of the young people, she said, my confidence has just shifted so much in the last year. And I used to be in the musical society, and I used to be on the stage all the time, and I used to be in the debating committee, and something happened. And I said, no, nothing has happened. I said, you're just starting new, fresh thinking around it. And you can just change that just as easily, instead of going back and trying to isolate it. I said, and she's at the perfect age. She's 18 years of age. Imagine learning that at 18 and not having to wait until you're 50 years of age,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
did, to learn all of these habit changing things.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like a switch. It's just the problem is that a lot of time we
Yeah.
think these things about ourselves, or we feel these things, but we don't realize that we do have a choice.
Yes.
And it's about, sometimes it's about recognizing, okay, I hold this belief about myself, or I don't
Yeah.
feel good about this, but
Yes.
actually I do have a choice. And what is the opposite of this? What's the,
Yeah.
if we say this is the limiting belief, then what's the truth belief?
Yeah.
What's the opposite of that one?
Yeah.
And then we've got to keep practicing the truth one. So if I believe I'm not good at something,
Mm.
and then the truth of that is, well, actually I'm good at loads of stuff I do, just not this one particular thing. So what if I was just to tell myself I can get better at that with practice?
Yeah.
So what's all the evidence that has shown me that I'm good at other things, and I'm able to learn other things, that I could, what are the strengths I have? What's all the evidence that I
Yeah.
could
Yeah. Yeah.
apply to this thing that I
Yeah.
believe I'm not good at?
Yeah.
But the
And actually,
problem
yeah.
is that we don't recognize we have the choice, or
Yes.
B, we don't
Yeah.
give ourselves the time
Yeah.
to to bring those thoughts
Yeah.
into conscious awareness, to play with them, to be curious about them. We
There you
just let
go.
them take
Conscious.
over.
Yes. Conscious awareness. And that is now. Right now. It's the only time that we are consciously aware. So if we bring it now, then we don't have to go back and look at all that stuff. We can just actually, as you say, I like that one, actually seeing the truth in it and finding evidence to show, when sometimes we don't even need the evidence to be shown to
Mm,
us. Once that old way of thinking collapses, it's
mm,
gone.
yeah.
Sometimes I find it really hard to go back and find that old way of thinking that I had. And I was talking in the last HubCast about my fear. My fear has gone. And it's
And
like as
that's
if,
because you've done a lot of work on it.
yeah,
Like, it's back to, we can't expect the
yeah,
switch to flick.
it just
And a lot of
happened.
people won't put the time and the
Yeah,
awareness and the energy in
yeah,
to slowly flicking the switch.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Slowly.
Well, and I would agree with you. I know it has been a progression, but what I think is really interesting is I don't know when it shifted.
Mm.
I don't know. I suppose it's like,
You didn't just wake up one morning and go, yeah,
yeah,
that's gone.
exactly. I'm
Yeah,
fixed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And that's exactly it. Now, another thing, and then I think we'll probably have to, because we could probably keep this going for about 10 hours. So another thing that I'd love to just point out, because when you were talking earlier, and we were talking about communication, and then we were talking about me being an introvert, but not really being or being an extrovert for years, but really I was an introvert in disguise. Um, And an awful lot of people are talking about imposter syndrome. So that's
Mm,
kind of going straight into that, when really that's a word, in my view, it's a word that we've made up to attach to what we were chatting about over the weekend with my son. Is it's sliding personality traits. So you'd have to adopt. I mean, there are natural areas where we have to adopt sliding personality traits. Even as I'm talking to you now, I'm adopting a different sliding personality trait,
mm,
because you and I have been all over the world doing crazy things, and we are adopting a personality trait for this HubCast.
mm,
And then we put a big brand and a name on it, called imposter syndrome, when really it's just an adaptation of who we are. We
mm.
get caught up in that thinking. What's your take on
I
that?
think that, yeah, well, there's two things here. There's the naming of it.
Yes.
And, over the years in, say, psychology, because I come from a psychology background,
Mm.
psychology and psychiatry have named syndromes and named,
Yes. Yeah.
different things to really to be able to identify that this is something that happens across people,
Yeah.
commonly across people. Like if we take a group of any 10 people, there might be two who feel imposter syndrome. There might be two who have a tendency towards depressive symptoms. We can go on like that. Um, and I think that, so in a way, these phrases are created to help people understand that there's lots of us that feel this way, so it's
Yeah.
okay to feel this way, and B, then to work out what is the course of action to help you with that.
Mm.
Um, and then the other thing I was thinking, just as you were talking about it, is that yes, I think that now a lot of different it's back to what I was saying earlier about, I meet, I meet so many people who have that feeling of, I'm not good enough. I'm not as
Yeah.
good as other people. I don't fit in here. I'm not good enough for this job.
Mm.
And so there is a lot of people that feel that way, but back to what we've been talking about, no one else can change that for you. Like
Yeah.
no one can change how you
Yeah.
feel. And anyone who feels that imposter syndrome of whatever it is, that their version of it, it's showing up. So some people have it with their own peers. Some people have it with just people who are senior to them. Some
Yes.
people don't have it with people they know really well, but they do
Yeah.
have it with people they don't know well, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that the thinking part is identifying, right, who am I having this with, and what
Yes.
kind of situations am I having this
Yeah.
with, and then it's coming back to, right, how can I shift this, and what is the
Yes.
opposite of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
just to come back to what you said about I can't remember what wording you used earlier, but like we do get stuck in stuff, and it's not necessarily about the knowledge we have. Like I know a lot of people who feel like, well, and I've been like this in the past, where, oh, I've got to do this course and I've got to read this book, and then I'll have the knowledge that I need.
Yes.
But actually, a lot of the time, it's actually just about trusting the wisdom that we have within us.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we all have so much wisdom when
Yeah.
we just pause and stop and let ourselves kind of just step back a bit from
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as you know, Ev, I've had to keep that, has had to be a daily practice, a
Yeah.
moment to moment practice for me during this whole lockdown, because I've had to keep stepping back and go, hang on a second. It doesn't matter what the world is saying
Yeah.
around what we have to do, and business is changing, and I'll have no business if I don't actually adapt, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to build these online programs, I've got to run all these virtual sessions, and it's got to happen now.
Yeah.
And actually it's just like, no, hang on a second, trust the
Yeah.
wisdom,
Yeah.
trust the wisdom.
Yeah.
Everything that's brought you to this point in your life,
Yes.
like every single one of us, everyone watching this, we've
Yeah.
seen so much, we've learned so much, we've met so many different people, we've been in so many different situations,
Yeah.
we've got beyond so many difficult situations we've
Yeah.
been in. We've so much wisdom within us that if we just sit still and trust it,
Yeah.
it's there, and we don't have to be
Yeah.
right all the time.
What a perfect segue. Actually, it's nearly as if you're setting me up to finish this off, because and thank you, and this is so not prepped, is that is what the premise of the Resiliency Hub is. It is, we are born with this. As a young baby, we are born with this. And then at certain stages, we start to adapt. And so many people, including you and me at various stages that we've known each other, we've lost that understanding that we are pure wisdom. Like, we are nature, and yet we forget that we're nature, because we're on this planet like every plant, like the plant behind you, but we forget we're part of nature, and nature has its own wisdom, so do we, and yet we completely overlook that because
Yeah.
we're born with it. So I love that as a perfect finish. Now, we could probably do this, as I said earlier, for about 10 hours.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to do a series. We decided we were going to record a little bit of a series, a narrative between the two of us around your habit changing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Because I think that if we can split it up into little sections,
Yes.
then people who are watching can then take away a little item, a little tidbit, and practice it, and then come back and build on that.
Yeah. And that's like anything. If you change things in small parts. So if we do our
Baby
little
steps.
videos in small parts, I think that would be great. And yes, and we'll continue these conversations. And thank you, Celine, for
Thanks,
joining
Ev, for
me
having me
on
on
the
board.
third
Me and the plant.
podcast. Yeah, and you and your plant. Bye. Thanks.